Okay, folks, so today's assignment is called West African Migration, and this is going to show us, let me back up. We just learned the story about how Mansa Musa went on his pilgrimage, and because of his journey and his moving around, it caused the rest of the world to really see how cultured Western Africa was. So in ancient days, people moved around, but not as much as they did in modern days. People would get their villages and they would stay, but there was a lot of migration and movement. But today, with the manufacturing jobs and jobs of fishing industry, people moving around a lot. West Africa is no different. In fact, it happens all over the country. I moved from California to Indiana. My wife moved from Mexico to the United States. So people move from state to state or from country to country. It happens all the time. And so in West Africa, it's no different. And so today what we're going to look at is how the West African migration really affected this area. I want you to read through this section. Talks about the Bantu people, which we'll hit a little bit harder in a couple of weeks. But read the European influences, the jobs that brought these push and pull factors, which there are things that push you out of a region. Say, for example, famine, war. Those things are pushing you away. They're not necessarily positive things. They're things that are driving people out of a region. If it's unsafe, you get pushed out. Then there are pull factors. There are things that pulled you to the new area you're in. For example, when I was in California, some of the push factors were it's very expensive to live. There's a lot of stuff we just didn't want to have to deal with. Things were busy and rushed in California way. So those were push factors, things that we didn't really want to have. Pull factors to Indiana were is a little bit more affordable lifestyle. We loved the change of the seasons. The schools were really great. And there's a lot of travel opportunities because we're right here in the Midwest and we can travel. Those were pull factors. So there's push and pull factors. And so read through this changing needs sections about push and pull factors and people moving around Western Africa. But here's what you're going to do. Here's your assignment. So this says you are the geographer, and it says the table on your worksheet shows the number of West African workers who found jobs in other West African countries in 1975. Your job is to create a map that will make the information easier for your readers to understand, because you're taking the job of a map maker here. Using the map on your worksheet, which is below, I'll bring it up in a second. Draw arrows pointing from the workers' homes outside of to the countries where they found jobs. The width and color of each arrow will indicate the number of workers, helping readers easily see worker migration patterns. So first thing you're going to do, let me show you what the map is. So I've got this map here of West Africa. This should look familiar to you. And you have, the first thing I want you to do, if you look at the instructions, is it says to label the countries to help you know where you're looking at. So this is also a good review for your quiz coming up here. So I'm not going to do all of them, but I'm just going to label some of these. And if you want to use the text box, you can as well, if that's easier here. So I'll label this one Mali. Oh, you know what? My Apple Pencil is up, so it won't let me do text, but you get the idea. So this is Mali, and so forth. Okay, so you can label the country. That doesn't look like Mali, does it? Let me make that a little bit more legible here. There we go. All right, so pretend I've labeled all the countries, and again, this is good review for you. Above this map, it shows this table. There's nothing to fill in for this table. The boxes are grayed out for a reason, because you're not filling this out. But what this does show is it shows how people moved from and where they moved to. So on this column here, this is the home country. This is where they started off. This is where they started, and this is where they found jobs. Okay, so, and this is, I think, in 1975. Okay, so you'll see this massive movement in this year. So in 1975, from Burkina Faso to Cote d'Ivoire, 726,000 people moved from Burkina Faso to the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, in 1 year. From Burkina Faso to Ghana, 159,000. From Burkina Faso to Mali, 47,000. So Burkina Faso lost, what's that, almost 900,000 people in 1 year. That's a huge percentage of their population. From Cote d'Ivoire, 44,000 moved to Burkina Faso, so they did do a little flip there. From Ghana to Cote d'Ivoire, 42,000. From Mali to Cote d'Ivoire, 348,000. So what you see here is there's a lot of people moving into Cote d'Ivoire, right? And that makes sense because they're on the coast, and this is Cote d'Ivoire here, right? And there's a lot of fishing and things, okay? So that's the idea. Now, what we're going to do is this. Let me remove that X there so I can do this. The instructions number 2 says, choose an appropriate width for the, well, actually, go back to number 1. Set 1 inch as the width for an arrow and choose the color for this category. So what you're going to do, it doesn't have to be exactly 1 inch, but it needs to be a big arrow. I'm going to draw a large arrow from Burkina Faso to Cote d'Ivoire to show that 726,000 people moved. That's the biggest number on this chart, 726,000 people. So I'm going to draw an arrow. I'm going to use, let's go orange because I like orange. So we're going to draw an orange arrow from Burkina Faso to Cote d'Ivoire, and it's going to be a pretty good size arrow, right? That's I'm not a good arrow drawer, but this is going to be a messy map, by the way. So I've drawn a big arrow here from Burkina Faso to Cote d'Ivoire. Okay, now let's make that nice and big and thick. Okay, now if I am a map maker, I've made this map and I want to show this big giant arrow is going to show that a lot of people moved from Burkina Faso to Cote d'Ivoire. Now, the instructions tell you, number 2, choose an appropriate width for the next numbers, and then for each number, the arrows are going to get proportionately smaller as the migration numbers get smaller. So the next one is 348,000 people that moved from Mali to Cote d'Ivoire. So I'm going to take, let's go a different color now so it differentiates it. Let's go green. And I'm going to about half the size of this. So I'm going to go, it's going to get really messy here. Now, you know what, I'll just do this. I am a terrible artist. Remember I was telling you when we were talking about 8th grade and how I shouldn't take art class? I can't even draw an arrow. But you get the idea. So this is a smaller arrow. It's about half the size of my orange arrow because it's about half this number, but going from Mali into Cote d'Ivoire. All right, then I'm going to take, what's the next number? 244,000 from Togo into Ghana. So Togo is here, Ghana is here. So, let me erase that. I'm going to take another color, let's go blue or whatever the color this is, and it's going to be even a smaller arrow, but still a pretty good sized arrow. I am terrible. Well, it looks like it's not going to let me color over, but so play with it, and if you take this into OneDrive, it's going to be good. But I think you get the idea. So there's going to be arrows all over the place. I want multicolors. I want all of these numbers represented. What in the world's going on here? All these numbers represented on the map. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different arrows, and it's going to be a hot mess. You're going to have these countries labeled. There's going to be arrows pointing all over the place, and that's the idea. It gets messy. And this people moving in and out, it's going to devastate economies. It's going to help other economies, and that's the point, okay? But it's also to show you that people did have the option of moving around, and it did affect these countries' cultures. It affected their economies, and in a sense, it affected their governments because it changed the amount of people they had. Okay, so that's what you need to do. I'm in class. If you have any questions, let me know, but that's what you got to do.